you then got into you made your Pura Cup. Pura Cup is what it was called then, instead of Sheffield Shield. Pura Milk was the sponsor. That was in 2008. But you're from Newcastle, which from memory is about 2 hours, 3 hours north of Sydney. Yeah, you talked about the influences of rugby league and other sports you played growing up. I mean, what was life like growing up in regional New South Wales, and what do you remember as your earliest cricket memories as to what drew you into cricket?
I think I was very fortunate. I had a lot of good, I could keep coming back to these mentors. I had a lot of good adults around me that shaped and molded me and, ping-ponging me in a good direction. So I was always a good athlete. Early on, I was got selected for the Newcastle Knights junior rugby league program. So my first dream was to actually play for the Newcastle Knights. And there's a guy no one on here might have heard of. His name was Paul Harrigan. He was the front row for the Newcastle Knights, and he was the captain. And he was this just tough man. And he just led by example. And if there's any big game, he just like, I'm going to do it, and you guys just come with me. And he just smashed people. And I grew up watching this Newcastle Knights team that had never won a grand final, and they won this grand final. They were the underdogs. This blue collar town, everyone worked in the coal mines, on the railway, just the blue collar, community, and all this talent had come from Newcastle, and we ended up winning the grand final. And so a lot of that shaped and molded me, like you're an underdog kind of thing, your toughness and mates. And so coming through rugby league, it was the same. I was always playing with men. I was always like the young kid in the team. So I learned my place in the team pretty early, but they were good men. They were really good people. And they taught me, what my job was as a bowler, leading from the front, being a good human being, and just all those simple things that you shouldn't really be talking about, but they drilled it into me. And I was also lucky I had Gary Gilmore. He played at the same club I played for in Newcastle, and I played with his son. So he was around, and I'd always work with him at club practice. So I was really fortunate. A lot of the guys at Newcastle training, the rep practice that we'd have, were all, they were in their 30s at that point in experience. So I was fortunate to have a lot of good people around, and played Newcastle, New South Wales country. And it wasn't until, so being in Newcastle, the only way you can make it professionally in Australia is you need to go to the capital city. In Newcastle, I had to move to Sydney, or if you're in Queensland, you got to go to Brisbane, Perth, whatever the capital is. So out of high school, I always wanted to go to Sydney and play, but I wanted to make sure I had a big season in New South Wales country to establish a name for myself as a fast bowler and just develop a bit more. And so I waited until I was 21. So I played a couple more seasons in the country playing for, so there's a few different, the people I played with, they were like, you can either go to Sydney and play second grade, or you can play here, open the bowling for Newcastle, New South Wales country, play New South Wales country Colts, and play hard cricket and, really challenge yourself, but play with men who have been around a lot. And then when the time's right, like when you're hitting the straps, like then get to Sydney. And so that was the approach I took. And I had a big season. I had a lot of phone calls. People want me to get to Sydney, and it was 21, and Billy Anderson, they're at Randwick Petersham, they rang me and said, can you come to Sydney? Do you want to come down and play for us? At the same time, I had multiple clubs want me to go and play for them, and end up picking Randwick Petersham. The president's Mike Whitney. So I was like, well, that's good. He's a bowler. He's got that mindset and mentality that I want to learn from. Billy Anderson, and the captain was Simon Kadich. So he was obviously the captain for New South Wales and played for Randwick. And they also had Nathan Horrocks, Usman Khawaja. So I was like, that looks like a good team to be around. If I play well with them, I'm around guys who are already part of the system. So I picked them, and I remember Billy had organised for me to just go netball at New South Wales. No one knew me. I rocked up and had a beard, this kid from the country. So I was big and strapping and looked like I was a rugby league player. In first session, I just bowled like fast, bowling quicker than nearly everyone at training. It was a full training session. So back then, training was awesome. It was Brett Lee, Bracken, Stuart Clark, Haddon, Watson, Michael Clark, Kadich, Jakes, McGill, everyone. Plus then So that was all the guys who were playing for Australia. Then you had the actual New South Wales squad. So then everyone in training was unbelievable. Like it was unbelievable. So every time you went to training, it was like a selection, like you being picked. So everyone was bowling fast. It was red hot practice. And I remember my first practice, I bowled really well, and everyone was like, "Who's this guy? Who's this old guy from the country?" I remember Usman. He always was like, "You look like this 30-year-old that just coming down from Newcastle." And anyway, I got picked for second 11 that first weekend. After that first like couple of weeks of practice, and played second 11 for the rest of the year. I was just playing grade cricket, and I didn't debut for New South Wales until just after Christmas.
So when you say, sorry, second 11, when you say second 11, you're talking about Randy Pete's second 11 or New South Wales second 11?
New South Wales. Yeah.
But you were being picked in the first grade for the Randy Pete's.
Yeah. So I was open the bowling for the Randwick Petersham. So I went straight into first grade. So that was when the time was right. I didn't want to go to Sydney and play second grade. So I wanted to show that I'm good to go. I'm the opening bowler. I'm going to slot straight in and open the bowling. Yeah. So that was my role with them. And then played second 11, every second 11 game got picked in. And then Simon Kaddish was that captain. And the thought was, because I was a little bit chubby, I wasn't fit, I was just explosive and I could bowl quick. They needed me to get fitter. And so they basically they ran me hard, got me fit, got more games under my belt. And then after Christmas, when I was more fitter, I was ready to play Sheffield Shield cricket. And so that was a good thing. There was this pathway for me that they were like, "No, you're going to play, but we need you to get fit first and kind of earn it." So after Christmas, I played, and it was awesome. It was pretty good. What was that? 2007, 8, I think.
Your Pura Cup debut was February 2008 against Tasmania. That was in Hobart.
Freezing cold.
Another place where it's freezing cold.
Freezing cold.
And in that game, your first wicket, Travis Burt.
I'll never forget that. Yep.
Take us through it.
It's funny, like, just to set in grade cricket, I was doing really well. Like, I was confident, bowling quick. I was comfortable with what I was doing, but then you take yourself out of that and then you play Sheffield Shield cricket. And it's just like, it's what you've been dreaming of for forever. And I was like, oh my God, this is overawing. Like, you got Michael Di Venuto, Dan Mark, like all these people are playing. Bailey, Tim Payne was playing. So this is kind of
run through the rest of the list. So you've got George Bailey, Dan Marsh. You've got Luke Butterworth, who I don't think he ever played for Australia, but he had a very, very good first class career. Yeah, he had one outstanding season, but it was just at the wrong time where there was a lot of Jim at the top. Brett Jeeves, Ben Hilfenhaus. So it's a stacked lineup, and alongside you, New South Wales. So this is the New South Wales 11 that you cracked for your debut. Phil Jakes, Philip Hughes, Simon Kaddish was the captain, Peter Forrest, who had a very lengthy first-class career, Bo Casson, Dominic Thornley, Usman Khawaja, Dan Smith was the wicketkeeper, Matthew Nicholson, Mark Cameron, and Burt Cockley rounded out the 11. So that could be as good as an international 11, and here it is a state 11.
So I came through the system when it was before there was this youth policy, and Sheffield Shield was the thing. It was the main product in like Australian domestic cricket. There was no Big Bash. T20 cricket wasn't around. So you basically travel, you'd play a 50 over Ryobi Cup, and then you'd have a day off and then play a 4-day game. And so Sheffield Shield was red hot. Like it was good cricket. And to crack into that team you felt like you were a part of something pretty big. And it was just a bit overawing. Like whatever it was, 8 months before that, I was just playing country cricket up in Newcastle. And then here I am sitting in the change dressing room as all these, superstars. So you kind of get like those thoughts running through your head, like, oh my God, am I good enough for this? Am I really cut out for it? And so it took me a couple of games. Like, well, the first thing I remember was bowling to Di Venuto, and most people I could bounce and they wouldn't hit it. I remember bouncing him and he just whacked it. And I'm like, oh my God, oh, that wasn't even that short. And he's pulled me through mid-wicket. And I got hit a couple, and it's just trying to feel comfortable in that environment. So that's that whole other thing of like, your mental skills and sense of belonging. And it took me until the following season. So I played twice that season. Next season I played, it was nearly most of the season, and I ended up being a leading wicket taker for New South Wales that season.